This conference will now be recorded.
Hey, Joe, your show.
Okay. Good evening. Thank you. I'm going to call the meeting, the June 7, 2021 virtual regular EDC meeting to order, starting at 6:30. For those of you who don't recognize me, my name is Joe Mira. I'm the chair of the EDC, and I'll give you a brief introduction of the go-to-meeting format. I'm not going to basically, those who are on computer tablets or smartphones, please mute your devices until you're called upon to speak. When you're called upon to speak, please state your name and your comment. The system doesn't do well for multiple speakers, so if you're only one person speaking at a time, if you're respectful, we're going to mute. We're going to hit the mute button. I think I've covered all my bases. Yeah, we need you to identify yourself, your name, address, and your comments. Anyone refusing to identify themselves will be blocked from the meeting. We'll begin the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God. Thank you.
Joe, you're breaking up a lot.
Yeah, I didn't know if I was the only one, but you're breaking up an awful lot for me too.
Okay, I'm going to sign off and come back.
Does everybody have their air conditioning on? Yeah.
Yeah.
Mark, you're in charge now.
I had the men in the house carry it upstairs just a little while ago.
I think the town hall is on a timer, which I can appreciate, but I'm sure it goes off at 5 because it's warm in here.
Yeah.
Tim, any scuttlebutt on when we're going to come back in person?
I think the council may be looking to do a July meeting in person. I think they're
Oh, wow.
actively pursuing it now, so stay tuned for that. I know they almost did it. They almost did their May meeting, one of their May meetings that way.
Uh-huh.
I know that there's a desire for them to go back in that direction on their part.
All right. Is this any better?
Perfect.
So far,
It's better? Okay, good.
To use your terminology, yeah, it's much better.
I'd like to start the meeting by welcoming Rex, the Rex Department, and they have a small presentation. Kinds of questions and answers afterwards. So if you would like to take it away, Virginia, Jenny, are you going to make present?
Jenny.
Yes, Jenny.
Hi, Joe.
Hi,
Hi, everyone. I'm great. So thank you so much for having us tonight. I'm going to ask if you could let Barbara share her screen, and she'll just pop up the slides that we just need to go through. And I know time-wise, we'll make this move as fast as we can, but we're obviously very interested in your thoughts. So Barbara Momberg, who is our project manager for the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, and oh, it has been a very interesting year. So Barbara, take it away.
Just waiting for controls.
all right, Barbara. So walk me through that. What do I need to do to let you share the screen? Share your screen.
Okay, according to GoToMeeting, it says ask the organizer.
Okay, so let's
Let me
see.
Tim, you click on the little people.
All
and
right.
You find Barbara and you right click on Barbara and say make presenter.
Out of all the different formats we've used.
You're there, Barbara.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hank.
You're
Great.
welcome.
Thank you so much. Barbara, take it away. This is our first go-to meeting. We've been on many platforms.
Okay, well, we're gonna do it this way. Can you see the whole slide?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay. All right, because part of it's cutting off for me, but that's okay. As Jenny said, we're here to talk a little bit about the comprehensive economic development strategy for South Central Connecticut. And the towns that are included in our region are from Milford to Meriden to Madison. And what's important about this is, one, is that it gives us direction in terms of economic development to move forward cohesively, because the cities and towns in our area are obviously very small and have limited impact on what they can do on their own. The other reason we do this is it's a requirement from the US EDA. We are designated as an economic development district. We were actually the first federally recognized district in Connecticut. And so the value of that for all of the towns is, because we have a distressed municipality within our region, all of the towns are available to go ahead and apply for benefits that are usually just for distressed municipalities. So that's why we went ahead and did the economic development district. In terms of demographics, we're kind of disappointed. We haven't gotten the 2020 census numbers yet. According to the information that we have from 2019, which is of course an estimate, we are still losing population. It's really hard to say how that's all going to turn out once we get the 2020 census data, and once we figure out if people have really relocated here from, you know, New York and Boston and all of those other denser areas, and if they're going to stay. So we wish the data was more concrete, but right now that's what we've got. Per capita income, median household income have both gone up. Probably part of it is due to the increases we've seen in minimum wage. Not really sure about that either. The one thing that we do know for sure is that the cost of housing in Greater New Haven has gone up dramatically. When we did this presentation last year for you, it was $205,000 for a median sales for a single family home. And now it's $250,000. And I just saw tonight that May 2021 over 2020, it's been a 22% increase in the median household income and median sales price. And there were about 20% more homes sold. So we're definitely seeing movement there. We're starting to see a decrease in inventory, and people are basically, you know, showing up with cash. The one other issue we continue to have is that the median age in the region continues to rise. Again, this may be impacted by the families who could be moving here from out of state. Last year when we did our SWOT analysis, it was before March 1st. So, you know, February 28th was our data cutoff date. So, you know, we were sitting relatively pretty. Our key sectors were growing. Unemployment was 3.3. We had issues, you know, that the housing market didn't offer great places for people to downsize in their own towns or be a first-time buyer. We also had the issue, the state's financial situation was not great. And of course, you know, changing anything in Connecticut is very difficult. Well, 2021 came, you know, it didn't take, you know, time for the ink to dry on this report when all of our key sectors were destabilized. Unemployment jumped to over 11%. Our housing issues were exacerbated by new demand from outside of the state. The good news is that the state was able to fully fund the rainy day fund, and they did a really great job responding to the pandemic and the needs that were in terms of PPE, of testing, of vaccines. We have consistently been in the top 2 or 3 in terms of vaccinations. And I think that speaks very well of our state and how we responded. So the 5 top economic drivers, as you see here, we sort of took them for granted that some of them were very protected from any kind of economic upheaval. We certainly didn't take a pandemic into consideration. Healthcare, which has traditionally been very solid for us, they were damaged so much during the first wave because they had patients who needed such intensive care, and they were forced to discontinue their elective procedures, which is their revenue stream. So you had that complete flipping of their fiscal situation. Higher education, kids went home for spring break and then were told they couldn't come back. We recently had a presentation from the president of the independent colleges, and a lot of the colleges suffered real financial damage by having to reimburse students for room and board. Those costs were already there. In terms of manufacturing, they did pretty well because they were considered essential businesses. Where they got tripped up a little bit was with the trouble with the supply chain. That's the problem when you have a pandemic, it's global. And whether you're in a good spot at that moment, if your supplier isn't in a good spot, it's still impossible to move ahead. The industries that we've always considered very susceptible to changes in the economy, arts, entertainment, and tourism, they really suffered. I'm sure I don't need to tell you how bad it's been for retail. All the museums have closed, all the concert venues closed. There were all kinds of restrictions on lodging. So all of that has been very tough. I would say that the people who were in, white collar jobs, who could work from home, didn't have, childcare to worry about. They've done okay through this. It's the people who don't work in that situation, the people who have face-to-face interactions. It's the people who have to figure out their childcare and their remote ed. And there are all kinds of factors where it became clearer again how much difference there is between the haves and the have-nots in our state. In terms of where we're positioned for recovery, we're doing much better than most states. First of all, our vaccination rates are typically in the top 3 in the nation. It's hard to keep track of the percentages because they keep adding age groups to it, but we're definitely at over 70% of the adult population being vaccinated. And, as I talked about with manufacturing, essential businesses remained open through the pandemic. And the definition of essential was fairly broad. Liquor stores are considered essential businesses. And there are many others that in other states, they wouldn't have been considered essential and they would have been shut down, therefore increasing the negative economic impact on that community. The second thing that worked to our advantage was the phased reopening with the well-defined sector rules. As we've seen, we keep moving forward, and yeah, it gets a little bumpy sometimes when we make a change in the rollout, but a little bit of time, it all tends to settle down, and hopefully that trend will continue. As of today, the positivity rate was 0.55. I can't even remember the last time it was that low. So I think, right now we're still heading in the right direction. And I don't know about you, but I'm still seeing people wearing masks when they're out in public. In terms of goals and objectives, they really haven't changed since the 2018 5-year sets. We are still working on these 5 major areas, and what we're working on within them has changed a little bit. We are definitely focusing more on equity. We found that the business development piece, we're actually seeing a lot of people open businesses. In 2019, it was about 4,500. In 2020, it was 5,171. So during the Great Recession, we saw people go back to school to, get a master's, get a PhD. Every town saw people's educational attainment increase. This time, obviously, the going back to school is not the same as it would have been. So I think people took this time to go ahead and start their new business. Maybe you can see, I can't. What we found is that there's an expanding demand for logistics centers. Those are great, but they may not be the highest and best use of our available properties. So that's one of the things we're going to be looking at, businesses that we can recruit. Of course, our primary goal will be to work on developing the businesses that are here, because that is, so much easier than trying to get someone to relocate. So there are some people who theorize that because people will be working remotely, some people may have smaller hubs in different places, and we might be a good location for that as well. In terms of funding, it seems counterintuitive, but we are at the point where we've had more money than we've ever had to do some of the long-term projects that we've been thinking about. And we're waiting for the state's plan to come out on how they're going to prioritize their ideas. We know that, and I'll show you on a later slide, we know like a brief sort of outline of what they're anticipating, but we really want to make sure that we target the most important pieces of those topics within our communities. As I mentioned, we are still having huge housing issues. The South Central Regional Council of Governments has pulled together a housing committee, and every town has a representative, and they are working to put together a housing plan that's required by the state by July of 2022 to talk about how we can work on housing as a region. And since it's not a one-size-fits-all kind of solution, there will be a general regional section, and then every town will have the ability to add what's specific to their town. The goal is to obviously increase the amount of affordable and attainable housing, but we want to make sure that it's done in a responsible manner. In terms of workforce development, it's going to be two-pronged. There will be the training programs to get the unemployed back into the workforce, and there's going to be the opportunity to upskill people who are underemployed. We've definitely heard loud and clear that there are a lot of jobs that are open, especially in manufacturing, that can't be filled. We have hospitality jobs that can't be filled. We have IT jobs. I mean, there are some really good careers out there, the trades, that we can't get people with the right skill set into those positions. And by doing that, if we can make that connection happen, we could start to close the wealth gap that's in Connecticut. In terms of what the Economic Development Administration at the federal level is looking for, it used to be up until last year, when you submitted a project for EDA funding, you got extra points if that project was located within an opportunity zone. While they're still very interested in developing opportunity zones, they're no longer giving more points for that. And they really want to look at projects that focus on these 7 items that are listed here. I won't read them to you because we're sort of talking about them, in the roundabout way. But they're things that are very necessary. They are things that go along with what has always been a part of our economic development strategy as a region. And I just think that we're going to have perhaps a slightly different focus and actually some money to implement the plans that we already have in place. Well, this is one of the areas, resilience, that I absolutely dread, because obviously our resilience plan did not include a pandemic. And so clearly we weren't ready. No one was ready for this. We looked at, the shortages of PPE, the, testing, the supply chain for everyday goods. There were huge problems at the beginning of the pandemic, and there are certainly still some that have continued on. But right now, what we're going to do is look at some of these bigger issues and try to make sure that we're covering these with our resilience planning. And again, I will send this presentation to Tim, but these are the major areas in which the state is focusing. And I think you can see here how our ideas would fit in. So now, and I don't know how I have to give the control back to Tim, this is your opportunity to let us know what is most important for the region from Wallingford's point of view.
I have a question for Barbara.
I have a question, if I may.
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay, either Barbara or Jen, a few years ago, we were looking at some possible funding for brownfields. Is that something that now that the state has a little bit of money that would be on the plate or not?
This budget isn't approved that the legislature is currently working on. There is some brownfield funding that will be available in the current budget, upcoming budget, I guess. So as soon as I actually have a copy of the budget as it's currently formatted, I'll send it to Tim after the meeting, and we can check it for brownfield funding.
Thank you.
Sure.
Joe, I have a question.
Go ahead, Mark.
Barbara, great presentation. Thank you very much. You made a comment on logistics centers being in a town, and it's not, in your opinion or someone's opinion, not the best use of the availability of property in a town. Can you elaborate on that more?
Sure. I mean, basically, if you're looking at the ability to have a manufacturing center or a bioscience kind of facility, those will generate more revenue for your town in terms of property taxes, and they will also generate jobs that pay higher wages. I think we are going to continue to see logistics centers simply because we're located in such an area where there's dense population within 500 miles of us. And again, it may be the best use for a particular property. We just want to make sure we don't end up, just a depot for people to bring goods and goods through, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure.
I think one of the things that we're really challenged in this region is we have very little land left. And I think the pandemic has demonstrated some of the gaps that we have in terms of opportunities. So the state is taking a different, they're modifying their thinking with advanced CT. So I think as long as we don't use up all our land with just logistics centers and we keep an open mind, I think we'll see some new opportunities coming through. And it's one of them happens to be on your agenda tonight.
Hey, Joe, this is Tim. Can I jump in?
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So Barbara, you had talked about the fact that Wallingford qualifies for some of the distressed city benefits because that's news to me. So as I've seen different opportunities for distressed cities, I always read past them because we're not a distressed city. But you're saying that we qualify for distressed city benefits because Rex qualified as a region?
Correct.
In it correctly?
Correct. If you look at the notice of funding available,
Mhm.
read what you're looking for is a city or a town that is a part of an economic development district, or EDD. Sometimes they don't even type it out. So that's what you should look for. If you're not sure, send it to me, and I'll also check with our EDA representative, we just changed rep about a year ago, and she's been fantastic. And the first question she's going to ask is, did you talk to Rex about that? Whatever the project is. And
Okay.
she's been very supportive. She's been worked great with New London on their wind farm work. So happy to help in any way. And a data center may be something that they're interested in.
Very good, thank you. And then Barbara, you also said, what are the major issues for Wallingford right now? Two major issues. Employment. Everybody. I don't care what category of business, they're all looking for people. So, and that's, it's a nationwide issue at this point. So you asked, I wanted to make sure that was, put out. Secondly, it's office space. We have upwards of 25% of our Class A office space vacant. I know that's not Wallingford alone either. That's a regional and growing issue, but those are two things in your day-to-day lives. If there's anything that we should be doing, could be doing to take and move the needle on either one of those, we would appreciate you keeping us in mind, because those are big deals.
Absolutely. And that's something we don't think anybody nationally has sort of found their way, but we are constantly researching that and trying to find all the information we can on how people are addressing that, because it is a problem everywhere, and the people who figure it out first are going to be in the best position moving forward. I won't say what town told me this, but their wish for economic development was to have access to your power.
Right.
And
We've heard that a few times.
I can't imagine that's just one town. I think there's many.
no, one of them just flat out said it. So
I'm having a call with Patrick Flattery from Department of Labor, and I'm sure Joe knows who that is. He does a lot of their data, because we want to understand why we have so many jobs, and yet the continuing claims aren't really falling, and they're in multiple sectors, as Barbara outlined earlier. So we're trying to understand the data as well, and we just don't at this point. So if I learn anything new, we will certainly share it with the 14 other towns after my meeting. I think it's Thursday.
well, and
Yeah,
this
if I
and this
could-
hasn't gotten a lot of airtime, but the state is now requiring people receiving unemployment benefits to prove that they are looking for a job. I'm not sure it's in effect yet, but that is going to be a change from what it was before. And yes, it's relatively easy now to make it obvious, make it appear like you've been looking for a job, but that may be an incentive with that and the $1,000 to get some people back into the workforce, especially as the school year comes to an end and parents and caregivers are have some less of a burden doing home education and things like that.
I think Joe was trying to say something.
I'm sorry.
First of all, great presentation, and I really understood within the time frame. I really do appreciate it. As far as the skilled workers, I think it has more to do with the unemployment benefits than it does with skills. And the reason I say that, or something to factor in, is that I know, again, I have the workforce background, and I'm plugged into a lot of these pipelines, and even the local programs that we're running in Wallingford, we're getting weaker and weaker attendance. So if it was a skills gap, you would think more people would show up for training. So I just wanted to put that out there to give a balance of part of the problem, for whatever that's worth.
We're perplexed as well. Some of it is obviously the benefits. Some of it is childcare, because not all childcare facilities have reopened yet. So if you don't have a place to bring your kids, if you start at 7 o'clock and your kids don't go to school until 8:30, what do you do? But I think as Barbara outlined, they'll start to feel some more pressure with the July 1st deadline of having to report the jobs that they're applying for. And, again, there is going to be increased pressure. But yeah, we need to get more people working. We need to increase workforce participation even beyond what we were in 2019 to really have an economy that grows. And that's going to be a big hurdle for the whole state, not just our region.
Also, childcare and transportation are two major factors in a lot of people not joining the workforce in certain communities. And it's something workforce has been pushing for the last 7-10 years. And unfortunately, Hartford hasn't gotten the message.
Well, there should be a lot of money from the ARP funding. Again, we're waiting to see the final budget numbers and exactly how that will be deployed. But hopefully a lot of that will be to address the issues that you've just outlined.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions?
Hey,
I have
Jim,
a question.
Pat, go ahead.
I don't know if any of you watched 60 Minutes yesterday and how these towns and hospitals and everything are getting hacked. They're taking control of even the smallest of towns. How big a concern is that for our state and the towns within our state?
It's actually a big concern. It's both public and private enterprises that could be impacted. That's one of the issues that we're hoping to address as part of our resilience planning. Cyber attacks are real. And we've seen how they've impacted, food production, fuel delivery, water, power grid. Well, that was a storm. But all kinds of different bigger things that are interconnected. And yeah, that's on our list of things to look at in terms of resilience, because right now I think we are vulnerable.
Will Wallingford be in a safer place because we don't have all their stuff online?
I'm not sure what you guys do.
You can't pay your bills online in Wallingford. Well, you could through another third-party service, and you can't look up your records or anything online. We don't have all of our records online for our town.
Well, and I mean, it would depend on the kind of attack. I mean, if it was a phishing attack and somebody clicked on the link, that would still create an issue. I know that you guys don't use as much technology as some of the other towns, but exactly how much of your personal data or your town data is available, I just don't know.
Okay.
Well, wait, excuse me. I hear too much of that around town. Let me correct it. We have the support and technology needed to run a daily operation. We don't have a lot of the frills that a lot of towns spend their money on, but we do have mammoth technology that we use. So I'm sorry, I just don't like to hear that.
No,
That was no, it's not you, Barbara. It's just that was a conversation 8 or 10 years ago. I would have kept quiet, but I know what the town has been doing and what's online and what isn't online. Yes, as Patricia mentioned, there are some things that are still yet to be added, but the town is really light years ahead of what's perceived by the public. And I'll just leave it there. I'm sorry.
So I'm grateful that we're at where we're at. I'm grateful that we don't have I am grateful. I've been grateful for years, actually, thinking of how these towns are getting attacked because they have everything out there that everybody wanted online. And we held back a bit. And it's a good thing. It's put Wallingford, I think, in a really good position. I don't want us all up there online.
Okay. Any other questions?
If I could just add
Yes,
one more
Gary.
thing to the cybersecurity, the Council of
Yes.
Governments is working with all 15 towns to enhance their internal security systems. And they're doing it with the regional services grant that they received from the state of Connecticut. And I'm absolutely sure somebody from Wallingford is participating. So everybody is being proactive, particularly around the municipal systems, because we obviously want to make them as strong as possible and not subject to the vulnerability of attacks.
I'm sorry, Jenny. I didn't catch the beginning. Who's doing that?
COG,
Okay.
as part of the
Thank you.
regional services grant. So they've actually been doing that for, I can check with Carl and get the exact date.
Thank you. Gary, you had a question?
Yeah, I'm just gonna reiterate something that Joe said earlier, and again, I think it's still being somewhat overlooked. Transportation. If you have a business up here in Connecticut and you rely on getting product up here from down in the southern part of the state up to here, no matter what we're doing with railroads and everything else, I can tell you the bottleneck, coming up through 90, 95 is still a huge issue. And there's people looking at it, businesses are looking at it all the time saying, we just can't reach you. It just takes too long to get up there. So I don't know if that's ever going to be addressed in the Fairfield County area, but something that needs to be on the radar screen.
Thank you. All right, with that, I'd like to again thank, yes,
Just-
sir.
Just for the benefit of the whole commission. So Ginny, you mentioned the ARPA money. This is the American Rescue Plan Act money. Wallingford will be getting $4.3 million. The mayor has asked the Economic Development Commission to engage in how to disperse some of that money, because obviously some of it is meant for economic development relief. So we have been looking for some guidance other than the written word, but I guess continuity between communities as to how that money is dispersed. Because I've already seen, for example, the city to our north is giving out money in a certain way that appears to me to be a violation of the regulations. But I don't want to have Wallingford say, all right, we're going to give it out in a certain way, but North Haven doesn't, or North Branford doesn't. There seems to be an opportunity for us to at least be not necessarily in lockstep, but be aware of how other communities are distributing the money so that we don't run into any potential backlashes. So I throw that out there because we've spoken to COG, we spoke to we were on the webinar this morning for who was it? I don't know. Were you on that?
CCM, I was gonna have one. I don't know if they did yet.
Yeah. So, but anyway, there doesn't seem to be any. I don't want to say blueprint. That's a little bit too strict, but some fundamental guidelines as to how best to distribute that money, an application process, a vetting process, etc.
I think we need to wait to see how the state is going to deploy its money, because you wouldn't want to create a redundancy if someone's eligible for access to those funds on the state level. And this way you can do a gap analysis of where this money needs to be deployed. It doesn't need to be spent until December 31st, 2024.
Right.
So I'm encouraging people to take that step back and not rush to your point, a blueprint or a plan, because today we're not really sure where we are with all the different businesses in every single town. I'm hearing that some towns are going out and buying fireworks and planning more community activities, but I think we really need to wait until we find out where we're going to end up with the state of Connecticut. Does that include your county money, or is that just your ARP money?
Just our ARP money.
Okay, so there's also another chunk of money that will be coming for the county, which may also be added to your 4.3. So at this point, I would not rush to make a plan until you know where the state money is being spent.
Very good. Thank you.
Jenny,
All right, Joe, thank you.
this is Mark. To Tim's point, comment, maybe a year from now or sometime when we have all this a little clearer to all of us, maybe through your organization, where you can get all of the towns together and say, look, this is what we have. These are best practices. Do what you're going to do, but these are best practices, and it may give each of our towns ideas that we probably never would have thought of before that another town did or was going to do.
Right. I talked with First Selectman Hoey on Friday, I think it was, about helping me convene a group with all 15 towns. We're all waiting to get through this budget period, and we're waiting for all of our towns to finish their budget and then bring the group together. And it will include, obviously, the chief elected officials, representatives like yourselves, and it will include the private sector. I think at this point, to Barbara's earlier comment about resiliency, we really need to figure out what would happen if there was another incident that had this kind of impact. Maybe not a pandemic, but something that had such a devastating impact on our economy. So we have to kind of take this step back and look and say, what would happen if, and how would we best be prepared? Because one of the things that we're asked by EDA on a regular basis, if you knew a pandemic was coming 6 months before you did, what would you do to prepare? And we still haven't had a really good answer. So I think that's something we need to do collectively. And then what do we do to really position ourselves? Because we're never going to get this kind of money ever again from the feds to make the biggest, most positive impact to move forward. And I think some of the things that we'd like to see is more younger people moving in, more people able to come into our community, who invest in our community. Those are things that are very real. When you look at the median age at 40.5, that's in the wrong direction. We need to be going in the other direction. We need more kids. We need more people who go to school here. Tim saw the presentation 2 weeks ago about how many students go to school out of state and then stay out of state. How do we help bring them back? Because we shouldn't have to work so hard to sell them on Connecticut. And it's about opportunity, housing, and the quality of life. So we got to package it all together to bring these people back.
Sounds like you're on it. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, with that, I'd like to again, thank you. And we'll
Happy
see you.
summer.
Yes. Have a nice summer. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Jenny and Barbara, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Before we continue, caller number one, could you please identify yourself? Caller, somebody's on their phone. Okay. I can wait. I got no place to go.
Maybe they stepped away, Joe.
All right. We'll come back. We'll come back to that. All right. I guess we need a motion on the minutes.
Joe, I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes as presented. And I'd also like to add that Stacy did a nice job on the minutes.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Mark, you second it?
Yes, I did.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hand. Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. Any comments on the expense report? Seems to be in line.
Yeah, I do, Joe, of course. It seems like there's quite a bit left over. Tim, are we giving back any money, or does Mark have it slated for anything?
Yeah, we actually have a campaign, a digital campaign running with the with the Fairfield County Business Journal and Westchester County Business Journal that the marketing committee pulled together pretty quickly. So, we have our student marketing team from Quinnipiac. We just made the final disbursement to them. So to answer your question, Jim, we probably won't be spending all of it. But it's certainly, you'll see by the end of June, which is the end of the fiscal year, we'll spend a good portion of it.
Okay.
But I do
It just
expect
seemed
to have
like
some.
there was a lot left over.
Yeah, there will be a surplus, as you know, and as our marketing committee chair insists that we spend this money like it's our own. So, we only put it to work when we know we feel we can get benefit. And certainly COVID had us sitting on the sidelines for quite a while. So,
Great, thank you.
and from a marketing standpoint, we were sitting on the sidelines from a work standpoint, but from a marketing standpoint, we're not promoting.
Okay, thanks for the clarification, Tim.
Okay.
You had me worried. I see a lot of new people at the meeting, and I'd like to get their input if they're here to discuss the data center. I'd like to hear their concerns before the commission reviews it. So if anyone would like to make a comment on the data center, now's your opportunity. Okay, then we'll just go right to the commission.
Joe, do you want
Yeah, I
to?
got a question.
Excuse me, who, what?
This is Thomas Fringos. What's the extent of the tax incentives on the data center project?
Joe, would it be helpful if I was to add some background,
Okay, why don't you do that then?
the open discussion? And hi, Tom.
Right.
I'll address your question in my this intro. Okay, Tom. So for the commission's benefit, everybody on the call, I just want to put a timeline to this whole subject. My file with the data center in terms of site selectors started in August of 2019. All right, so I want to put that into perspective. We right now this has become very public, which it needed to be, but it's not.
Excuse me, Tim, excuse me, Tim. Could everyone please mute their mics, please? I'm getting a lot of feedback.
Tom,
Tom,
you
if you don't, Tom,
Yeah.
got
please mute. Thank you.
All right, so again, file with Site Selector started August of 2019, so almost 2 years ago. All right, so it's very common for projects in terms of site selection to take a fair amount of time, and this is something that little by little over time, introductions were made. It gets to the point in the life cycle of a project where eventually it gets to the point where they've secured sites. And it was back in the fall where we said, okay, it's a good idea now that we've got to bring this to the mayor. We've got to bring this to town leadership because we understand it's data centers. We understand, from a scope standpoint, they're large projects. At the same time, the folks from GotSpace LLC, which is a newly formed LLC, backed by a substantial group of venture capitalists. That's what they tell us, so we have no reason to disbelieve that. They were working at the state level to try to pass legislation to make it more cost effective for data centers to come to Connecticut. This commission knows that we have had data centers in our sites for years and quite unsuccessfully. All right, so we've managed to attract a couple of very small data centers, but nothing of significance. And every broker out there has told me and has told us that attracting data centers was just not going to happen in the state of Connecticut because of the cost of doing business here. So this GotSpace LLC did manage to take and go to Hartford, met with DECD, met with the governor, and eventually had legislation passed to make them tax exempt. The entree for tax exemption, depending on whether you're in what zones you're in, are either a $200 million project or a $400 million project. So this is not a small data center that can come in tax exempt. These are the mega centers. All right. So now it's tax exempt, but Wallingford or any community that would host a data center will sign a municipal hosting agreement, which is negotiable. So for example, Basra has already signed one with GotSpace. New London has already signed a host municipal agreement with GotSpace. We have not. We are actively negotiating that agreement now and have been for about 6 weeks. It's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of detail, but what that host agreement does is it gives us a revenue stream. They don't want to call it a tax. Don't call it a pilot. Don't call it a tax. It's a municipal host agreement, but from the resident standpoint, it's money in the coffers. They have consistently talked in terms of either 16 megawatt facilities or 32 megawatt facilities. And I know if you're like me, when they first said 16 megawatt and 32 megawatt, I have no baseline. It doesn't mean anything to me. I can't get a sense of scale based on those numbers because I don't know necessarily what those things mean. But put it this way, 4 32 megawatt facilities. All right, 4, they proposed 7. 4 32 megawatt facilities would double the output of the Wallingford Electric Division. All right, so that should hopefully put it in perspective. So one of them is about a 25% increase in the overall output from Wallingford Electric Division for the entire town. So these are big projects. Okay, so the municipal hosting agreement is something that we negotiate. Again, we're in the process of negotiating where we would get a stipend for hosting them. All right, so stay tuned. I think it's these data centers. I think there's a great opportunity for us to pursue a couple of data centers. Quite frankly, 7 concerns me in a short period of time. I think it's something that they're big enough where we have to be very cognizant of what they are, how they function. Noise is something that we are studying in great depth. I have called communities, Edison, New Jersey, Piscataway, New Jersey, Somerset, New Jersey, where there are quite a few data centers. We've called data center communities in Virginia, all trying to find out what is it like being a neighbor of a data center. What's the proximity to residential of some of these data centers? And in most every case, these data centers are tucked away from residential neighborhoods. So we are very aware and very sensitive to the fact that some of the data centers have been proposed along Tankwood Road. Some of the data centers, Tom Ringrose is on the call. You heard him speak earlier. Tom owns a property behind the Hilton Garden Inn. And those properties back up to Silver Lake residential. So we have contracted, the law department has contracted a noise expert, a sound expert, so that we can take and make sure that we understand what type of noise they generate. They never shut down, as you can imagine. That has got to go, constantly, never stops. So there are air conditioning units, there are, so forth, that continue to run. And the other thing that we are very cognizant of is the fact that they will have backup generators. One 32 megawatt facility will have 10 significantly sized diesel backup generators, 10 of them. They'll use those backup generators, obviously, in an emergency situation, but they will also use them to peak shave power. So, on a hot August day, when the power grid is pulling, so much juice, the price goes up, reflecting the usage. So when they see the power going up in the grid, they want the ability to shut off, stop Wallingford Electric and turn on their generators and generate power that way. That's called peak shaving. You're shaving the peak prices off and producing your own power less expensively. So all things that we are, again, studying very hard to make certain that, we are cognizant of all residential abutters. So there's a lot of detail, and I just wanted to give you some insight as to how long the project has been, around. It's been now about 9 months. It's been in the public, or it's been in Wallingford leadership's mind. It's been several months now that it's been made public. So we're going through the public process. So Joe, I'll leave it at that in terms of my intro, and I'll put it up to any questions anybody may have.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, again, I'll go out to the public. If you have a question.
Yes,
Tom?
please. Wait, let Tom finish. If Mr. Ringrose is done, this is Andrew Mays and my wife Jenny Mays and we do live on Tankwood Road. So I do have a few questions.
Mr. Mays. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, finish.
Yeah, I'm sorry. We do have a couple questions. I mean, maybe just clarification. Thank you for the committee to let us join and speak here a little bit. Maybe I don't understand the Wallingford Power Plant supply chain. So 25% increase. I don't know what that means because I have no perspective of what they run at now. Are they running at 100% capacity and this is a 125%? I think that's kind of irrelevant, but I just wonder that. The second part of that is also excessive utilities that are going to be needed. So water and any sewage or anything like that along those lines. And I didn't realize that they would have 10 backup power units to run, but I understand most of those concepts. So I wonder about that. But then I think I wonder about the.
Allow me, Mr. Mays, thank you. Yep. I did receive your letter, by the way. It was very, very nicely written. and I think a very, very fair position that you've taken. So, and I want you to know that we are looking out for you. Okay, this is not a slam dunk situation. All right. So, but these data centers will use very little water. So water, sewer, the anything that there's no strain on the water sewer division at all. I am not an electrical engineer. I don't understand power probably any more than most folks. I just know Wallingford Electric Division. I mean, one of the reasons they want to locate these data centers in the sites that they've selected is because the overhead power lines are going right through the site. So
Right.
I know that they've got to go from the sky to the ground, and that's why they want to locate where they're going. So I don't believe it's a capacity issue at all. It's not like when they start up, everybody's lights are going to dim or anything like that. I don't expect that to be the case, but I'm not the expert. But I have heard no one talk about that as an issue. The single biggest issue, because first off, a 32 megawatt facility is about 160,000 square feet. They'll employ about 85 people, not a lot of people. All right, so the upside of having something of this magnitude in these zones is that traffic is not a consideration. It's not 85 people at a time. It's 85 people spread over 3 shifts a day, 7 days a week. There's going to be 20 some odd people in this enormous building at any one time. So not a traffic issue. It's from my standpoint.
One building though, right, Mr. Ryan?
That's yeah, for one building, a 32 megawatt. So we're modeling everything off of the 32 megawatt facility.
Mr. Ryan, if it's 25 people per shift, so at the shift change, so I don't know what their standard shifting would be, probably 11 p.m. they leave, and new shift start at 7 if it's on 11 to 7. So at 11 p.m. there will be 25 cars leaving, 25 cars coming in. Is that correct?
Mathematically, yeah. But given what else could go on these sites, because they are zoned industrial. There could be in a typical 160,000 square foot site, you'd have 200 vehicles. So
Yeah.
I think
Light industrial though, right? Like so similar to the properties on Northrop and North Farms though, right? So they couldn't be doing heavy industrial, but maybe more like Research Parkway type things.
I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, but we have sliced and diced this thing so we can make the best decision for the town of Wallingford. It's not a slam dunk that this is going to happen. I just want to stress that, or happen at the magnitude that God's space would like to see it happen. Traffic is my 2 cents. I would dismiss it. It's a non-issue. We are, one of the things that we are considering is insisting that the traffic go through the industrial park and not be able to exit onto North Farms Road.
Yeah.
Right. So in the year 2000, thanks to Commissioner Wolf and Joe Mira, I dug out a set of plans there in the year 2000 where Wallingford had put together just a concept plan of having the industrial park go from Fairfield Boulevard and Sterling Drive, which both right now dead end, but extending both of those roads and loop through the very properties that we're talking about, and as an extension of the industrial park. All right, so that's a concept that's been around for 21 years. Now that's something that's possibly could happen, but we are very, very sensitive about traffic on North Farms. I would be shocked if there was anything that would be allowed to enter or exit on Tankwood. So we're trying to say it's an industrial area, keep the traffic flow in the industrial park.
thank you very much, Mr. Ryan. I guess just not to take everybody's time, but I think just to make our main concern clear is that when we listened to the presentation by Mr. Quinn to the town council, he was mentioning that he sounded very accommodating, that engineers can consult each other and push the buildings back as far as necessary to address noise concern, appearance concern. We're a small town, we're small houses on Tankwood Road, and 2-story industrial building as per site maps published by GutSpace. They're 150 feet probably from my lawn. So this is very scary. And so when he was saying that they're flexible, at the same time, it looks like Site 2 maps, the property that they purchased is not a continuous mass of land. It's really little strips of, specifically along Tankwood Road, it's just a very narrow strip of land that those buildings barely fit on. So we did not see like really an opportunity there to any pushback, any flexibility in case they really want those buildings in. And so I guess, what is your view about that?
So you'll be happy that there has been an update on our insistence. All right, so our legal department in the process of negotiating a municipal host agreement insisted on seeing the specific sites that were being discussed and the specific sites that GotSpace LLC is optioned. All right, so it is not those slices of land that you've talked about. All right, they have optioned the property across the street from you, which is right now owned by Kogut Nursery. They have optioned adjoining sites that is owned by a variety of LLCs, but it's the Jeremiah Farm property. They've optioned the Santa Cruz property. These are all contiguous properties. All right, so between Tankwood, North Farms, and the industrial park, they have optioned, and the town council will be discussing this tomorrow night at the meeting, but they have optioned 296 acres in that swath of contiguous sites. So, and right now, the discussions that we have had internally, and we've had a number of them, is, as I put it, is if you're sitting on your front porch, if you live on Tankwood Road and you're sitting on your front porch, you don't want to be looking up at a concrete slab. Those buildings should be set back a comfortable distance so that aesthetically, and we can do things with berms, we can do things with landscape architecture and so forth. So aesthetically, those buildings can not look offensive to people that live in that neighborhood. Beyond that, it's about measuring the sound. So, for example, it's a matter of residual noise. So Edison, New Jersey has data centers that abut residential neighborhoods, but those data centers and those neighborhoods also abut Interstate 95 in Edison, New Jersey.
So they don't care.
So the background noise from the interstate washes out the sound of the data center. So people say, no problem with the data center down here. Well, it's because they have that type of noise backdrop. The noise backdrop on Tankwood Road is crickets.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
We love it this way.
Yeah. So just, I know it's a big leap of faith, but know that, people here at Town Hall, from the mayor's office, legal department, this economic development office, town engineer, we are all, insisting that if this is going to happen, that these buildings are set in such a way, and decibel level measurements from your front yard is really where we need to say, what's the noise level like at your front yard now? And what's it going to be like when the data center is up and running? And, there needs to be some measurable statistic and something that does not impact negatively your quality of life. So,
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
you're welcome.
Thank you. Tom, did you have a question?
Yeah, I think the answer for the electrical, I took a tour of Danbury Fuel Cell. I think at that time, they're at 1.2 megawatt per, they're about 10 by 20 feet tall. And they're just a large catalytic converter that runs off, starts up with natural gas, heats up, and then they're considered base load. And the city of Bridgeport has a circuit with about 20 of them or 10 of them. So that would be probably 15, 20 megawatts. And they just run off a little bit of natural gas. Years ago, the CNG was a contributor with the research. It's a Connecticut company. It's up in Danbury. No, it's up in Torringford. And when California passed their law, no more power plants will be built. Most of these power cells get shipped out to California and South Korea. So, but they don't make any noise. Hartford Hospital has one right next to the road. And there's a few more in Connecticut, but they're considered base load. They're like super efficient. And they need a little bit of natural gas until they heat up to, I don't know, 700, 1200 degrees. And then they just run 24/7. And they don't make any noise. It's a big lithium battery run by like a catalytic converter type of situation. But
Thank you. Excuse me, Tom, thank you for that background. Do you have any comments on the proposal that's in front of us?
yeah, well, I'm in favor of it, but instead of putting substations, you could do the Danbury fuel cell thing. So, you know, and that's
Thank you.
an indigenous company to Connecticut. All right, so just keep that.
If I may
Thank you
respond
for your input.
to
Appreciate
that point. So the GotSpace LLC has come forward with a workable plan that they know is a workable plan. Natural gas will have no place in terms of any backup generation. Natural gas is, in the eyes of data center professionals, way too inconsistent. It is not reliable. We know that, especially in the winter months, that New England has a significant issue with natural gas pressures. We know that there are huge manufacturers, large manufacturers in the state of Connecticut that, depending on how cold it gets, have to have dual fuel abilities because the government calls them and says, you know, shut off your natural gas, switch over to heating oil, because the supply of natural gas is too independent or too unreliable. So these folks, these generators that they have to have on site will be diesel, and it's not a negotiable point. It's diesel or they don't come. And that's a data center standard. So now it's a matter of us working with sound engineers, working with landscape architects to make sure that we understand the noise that are generated by diesel generators, you know, when they're running. Obviously, if power goes out and it's an emergency situation, you run them, and everybody has to deal with that. Like if there's a major power outage, you know, life is very different. But we can in the host agreement restrict when they can run them, you know, for peak shaving purposes, and we'll be very cognizant of that. But so just so you know, natural gas is not an option. It will be diesel generator, diesel fuel generator.
Okay, thank you. Anything else from the public? Okay, well, I thank you for your input. I want to bring it to the commission. Does any of the commissioners have any questions or concerns or?
Joe, with your permission, I'd like to make a motion to support this going forward with the understanding that we have more time to study, more time for the town council, for the mayor, for the planning and zoning. I mean, I'm not saying we support a carte blanche 100%, because I don't believe we have everything on the table that we need at this time. But I do want to support it. I think based on what we have at this time, it sounds good, but we have more homework to do. So I'd like to leave my motion at that.
My only concern is we really don't know what we're talking about. I mean, we understand the project, but we don't know the agreement between the town and the corporation. And depending on that agreement, myself personally, I can only talk for myself, that's where I would want to make my decision. Yes, it's a good idea in theory, but whether or not I would support it at this time, I support the fact, and this is just me talking, I support the fact of having the executives in the town work with the company to hammer out an agreement. And once that agreement is in place, I'd like to study it and make my decision based on that. So I don't know if that's,
Joe,
that's,
Joe, this is Mark. Can I say something?
please.
Jim, I would respectfully ask you to withdraw that motion only because I think it's a little premature. I think we have to get a whole lot more information before we can constructively vote on something to push it to the next level from our perspective. There's a whole lot of other commissions in this area that have to do it, but I think we're all in agreement along with you that it's something that's valid to look at. And I think that's what we and the town and the other commissions are doing. But to formally put it into a motion and vote on it to kick it ahead, I don't think you just need to do that. I just think we're a little premature on that. My opinion, but something for you to consider.
Right now, Mark, I agree, and that maybe I didn't display it right, but I like what I see so far. And again, we don't have enough information on the table to make a complete 100% support, but I would like to see our administration, our town administration, to move forward. And that's where I'm going.
Well, that's what they're doing now. They are working on it. And they're trying to nail down a lot of the things that Tim has spoke about. Is it going to be 2 facilities as opposed to 7? Is it going to be 4 facilities? You know, how many facilities can the town realistically handle with the quality of life intact? I mean, those are the things that are being worked out now. And I would like to see the final report. And based on that final report, you know, then reconsider it for a motion. So if that works well, I don't know.
Great conversation. At this point, I'll withdraw my motion.
Thank you. Does any of the other commissioners have any input or?
Joe, may I speak?
Sure, please.
So I think what I'm hearing is that the commission supports the or recognizes the benefit of data center development and supports the town leadership in their pursuit of the due diligence process.
Is everybody in agreement with that? Jim, is that something you could,
Yes.
you want to make that proposal? You want to make that?
Do you want, I didn't think we were going to vote on it at this time.
Yeah, I don't understand what you're looking for, Tim, other than an understanding where we stand. And what you just described is what we stand. Do you want it to be formalized in a letter and a vote? And what are you looking for?
I think it's appropriate to have a vote. Just again, acknowledging that the EDC feels that data center development is beneficial. And then support the town leadership in doing their due diligence. I think at this point it's a big enough, these are huge projects, okay? And for the EDC to be silent on it at this point, versus the first motion that was, you know, almost like we support it regardless of how big it is. And I think that's a concern. So I think in essence, we're saying we recognize that there's benefit to Wallingford to have data center development. But and we support town leadership, which is the mayor, the council, the law department, as they continue their due diligence process. And
we should add to that a concern of how large of an operation it's going to be. Again, I think my concern is, can we handle 7 or is it 4? What is the quality of life? I guess that's all part of the negotiation.
So if you want to make that motion that Tim just said, I'll second it.
But Gary had something to say. Gary,
I think the comments are, all going around the same issue, is that we support the idea of bringing a data center type business into the community. And the administration's, got our support and continue to explore it. But I would agree with what Mark said earlier, that, and you, Joe, that, it's not the type of thing that we can say, okay, we're 100% behind this. It's something that we will continue to support the administration to pursue the information.
Isn't that what you just?
I think that's perfect.
I agree. I think that's.
Jim, what do you think?
Stacy? Did you get that?
Yes, so I have down that the commission recognizes the benefits of the data center and supports the town leadership, mayor, council, and law department doing their due diligence.
Right. There's
And I
my
disagree.
motion. There's my motion. That's good.
I second it.
Okay, all in favor? Raise your hand.
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Stacey.
Just a
Okay.
reminder to the commission, if you have a quiet night tomorrow, planned for tomorrow night, the council is going to be discussing the subject. And it is now public information. I sent you an email this morning because I just received this first thing this morning, but you have a parcel breakdown in your email that shows that, the total amount of acreage that has been contracted by the developer is 538 acres. So, I mean, just let that resonate. So I think my only concern, I totally agree. I think there's a great opportunity for the town of Wallingford here, but I'm very, very concerned about scale. And, we just have to keep that in mind. So I think the motion that was presented and passed works perfectly. We recognize that there's a benefit, but let the town leadership do that municipal host agreement. And I think we're good, but just with an eye towards scale. I think Tom Ringrose brought it up, and I don't know if I answered your question, Tom, so my apologies. But so in terms of the municipal hosting agreement, one 32 megawatt facility, which again is pretty much the standard that they are talking about. That doesn't mean they can't build a 24 megawatt or a 16 megawatt, but they're modeling everything off of 32 megawatt buildings, which are about 160,000 feet. All right, one 32 megawatt building generates $1.5 million in revenue to the town of Wallingford in the municipal host agreement. There's additional benefit to the Wallingford Electric Division. Okay, so just think about that. 132 megawatt building, $1.5 million into our coffers. To give that some a benchmark, Bristol Myers at 1 million square feet generated about $3 million a year. At 150,000 square feet, we're going to get $1.5 million. We put in 2 data centers. We replaced the tax revenue lost by Bristol Myers. It's another way of looking at it. Okay, so just hopefully I'm helping put things into some comparative mindset for you.
Tim, I'd like to add that, they have plans for 7 facilities. We have no idea what they're talking about as far as a fast track. Is this a 2-year plan, a 20-year plan? These are some of the questions hopefully we'll get answers to through the town council and the mayor.
Right. The municipal host contract length, 20 years minimum, and most of them are going to be 30-year deals. So this is not a short-term thing.
Right.
This is, once they're there, they're there. So that's the idea.
Tomorrow's meeting, town council meeting, what time does that start?
6:30.
Okay, thank you.
Tim, I do appreciate you, giving those types of comparisons because it's very helpful to put it in perspective.
Thank you, and you're welcome.
Tim, did you say you're sending on that link for the town council meeting? Or do we just go onto the town website and get it? How we?
I think Stacy, could you send it out to the commission tomorrow, please?
I'll send it out first thing in the morning.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Stacy.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, then if we could, we can move on to the railroad station, the old railroad station.
Yes, so, sorry, I got a couple of meaty subjects tonight. So the old historic railroad station, all in Quinnipiac Street. This commission has been talking about this for a while. I'd say probably maybe just under a year, as far as the possible commercialization of that old railroad station, certainly as a key element to trying to stimulate some activity in the lower part of the hill, lower part of Center Street. We know that the upper, uptown, if you will, upper part of Center Street is alive, it's vibrant. The lower part of the hill needs, I refer to it as a B12 shot. We just need energy. We need to infuse something down there to make things happen. So the commercialization of the railroad station is something that we've talked about. We introduced it publicly for the first time in January. It was our strategy to take and put it out there. Of course, we've met with the mayor prior to that. We met with Dr. Menzo prior to that, because obviously the railroad station is the home of the adult education office and has been for a long, long time. And relocating adult education would be part of the process. But it has been out in the public for quite some time, and I don't know, I'd be interested in knowing what you have heard, but I have heard all positive things. I think there's a level of somewhat, quiet excitement about the possibility of that railroad station being something really special. So again, now that it's been out in the public, it's been talked about, adult education literally has started to look for another site in anticipation that we may, redo the railroad station. The next step is to do a feasibility study of that building. And, we'd have to take and put together an RFP. Our engineering department would do that. But they've asked me or us to do some research on, perhaps historic railroad stations in the state of Connecticut or beyond that have been repurposed. Have they been, we're not looking to sell the building, by the way. I would frankly, I cannot fathom the circumstance by which I would be in favor of selling the building. I think it's something that we would lease out just because of its location and historic significance. But the parameters of the feasibility study and the elements of that are subject to some more research from this office and input from you, so that we can then put together an RFP and then have some engineers go in there and say, okay, what do we need to do to bring this building up to code? What kind of money are we talking about? I think a market analysis would be part of the RFP that I would recommend, to talk about, what could go in there, what would go in there. I've been approached by a variety of organizations, from a small organic, an organic grocery store, to a cappuccino bar by morning, wine bar by night. I envision 2, maybe 3 businesses in there. I don't necessarily think it would be one, and maybe it's one. Who knows? Naugatuck, the old railroad station in Naugatuck is it's a restaurant, and it's a gathering space. They have meeting rooms where local businesses come in, rent them, etc. So there's examples out there. So, but next step for us is feasibility study, and I just wanted to say that and then ask for your input.
Joe, this is Mark. Can I say something?
Yes, I'm sorry. Good.
I think it's well worth pursuing to find out if it's worth pursuing. I always believe in small steps. I don't think that we should just leap into it for the fact that other places are doing it, so we must do it. But my suggestion is you get a committee together within our group, or put it to a committee in our group, and then just have them present stages of how we would present it to the commission, how that group would present it to the commission. And then from there, I think the commission then can say yay or nay, and we'd be more than happy to either push it on, or it just ain't worth it, one of those deals. So I think that's probably the best way from my perspective that we should do it.
If I could weigh in here, I'd like to see an engineering study. It's a very, very old building. I don't know from a structural standpoint what it'll accommodate. Restaurants have different codes that they have to follow, different businesses, even exit doors and so forth. So I think we have to see what it can accommodate before we move into what we want to do. And like Tim said, will it accommodate 1, 2, 3 different businesses? But I really think it should be, whatever it is, should be something that draws people.
Right. I agree.
Mhm.
I'm not an organic grocerist.
Does anyone else have anything to add to this?
I just have been following what's been on the public forum and stuff, and it seems to be, as you said, Tim, some excitement about what it could be.
Tim, do you have a timeline on these, on the steps that you mentioned?
Yeah. Usually I hold up my watch and say.
Yeah, okay. Now,
Nothing
has
like-
anything been ordered, anything been scheduled?
There's no reason to rush, but there's no reason to dawdle either. So from my perspective, I think we can start having these conversations, and if we can have an RFP put together by I'd say middle to late July, I think that's fine. And then maybe they have the RFP go out, by September 1, we've hired someone to do the feasibility study. I think that's reasonable.
Well, the reason I ask is, I like Mark's suggestion about forming a committee, but I think we need something to discuss before we put it together. So I'd like to at least to have the engineering or some report that where we could start to see what the feasibility was. So we're not spending time needlessly. Just,
Joe, can I say something?
sure, please.
We're just in the marketing subcommittee, we've just finished up with the student initiative. And I think if you let marketing come up with at least a proposal to the commission about how to set up a committee, these are the things that we have to start looking at. And then anybody wants to be on the committee, or if you want to have a separate committee, however you want to do it as chair, that's fine. But let us do the first draft to allow the commission to digest that, and then chew on it and decide on which way to go. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense, and I thank you for volunteering.
Okay, so Tim, at our next meeting, let's get that on the agenda, and we'll start working on that.
Okay. The minutes will reflect that, Stacy, so that'll be our reminder. Thank you, Mark. Joe, thank you.
So before we get off the topic, does anyone have anything to put, public or private? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to marketing. Committee, Mark?
Yeah, we had a real easy month this last month. We didn't do a heck of a lot. We did a lot of catching up. We paid the students off. We finalized that group. Our next step with that is that we're going to want to look at if we want to do it next year. And if we want to do it next year, what are we going to do? How are we going to engage the students? Obviously, it's not to set up social media because we've already got that going. But do we bring it to the next step? Is there a next step? All these questions the marketing committee has to digest and then bring it to you guys to decide what you'd like to see. We did, I think most of you were probably on it. We did make a presentation to the town council. At least their feedback was that they seemed very impressed with what we brought to the table. I think it dispelled maybe the public's perception that we're not involved at all in IT or social media as far as the town is concerned. We very much are and have been, and will continue to be even more so. So basically that's how the month went for us. We didn't have anything more formal than that go on. Patricia, did I miss anything?
Nope. Oh, I think you covered it all.
Okay, and
Let,
I'm not,
let me just
I'm
say
not
this,
sure
Mark. I
if
think,
if Rob's on or not, but
no, he's not.
go ahead.
I want to compliment you. First of all, on the program, from top to bottom, you guys did a fantastic job. And the presentation, I mean, you know, I've been in corporate USA, and I would have to go toe to toe with any corporate presentation I saw. Between the way you guys presented it and the way the students followed up on it, I think they did a great job, and you'll be commended on it. My only question to you is, as far as the next step goes, just a thought, something you can kick around in your committee. Would it be worth the time to send a correspondent? And first of all, we didn't pay the kids off. You reimbursed them for their work, right?
We made,
Okay.
we made the final payment.
Sounds like something I would say. Anyway,
Better word.
but would it be worth the time to send them a correspondence, getting their input? You know, again, thanking them again for what they did, and if they would have suggestions, if this was their corporation, what do they see as the next step? Because this is their background. This is what a lot of them do. They may come up with something we can't even think about. Just a thought.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent thought, and we've been talking about possibly doing that. So yes, I think it makes a lot of sense. Tim, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we only have the possibility of one coming back next year if we decide to do the group again. There's one left in school. The other ones are graduating, going on to whatever they're doing. So am I right in saying that?
That's correct. Yep.
So it'd be basically a really new group that we would be working with, which would be great because there's new ideas, new people, new exposure, new chance for them to get involved, new people to get involved. So we're excited that if we do take it to the next level or next step and have another year with these students, we're excited that we would get the feedback from them because this past group was just excellent. And I'm happy we could finally reimburse them for what that was owed them. So that ends that. Thank you.
Mark, if I may just remind the group that the part-time economic development marketing specialist position has been posted and advertised. So it was in the Record Journal on yesterday. And we put the part-time position out in our digital channels. So over the next couple of weeks, I'll anticipate some resumes and we go from there. But I think that position is going to be very focused on our marketing direction and certainly our digital channel management. So that person will help guide us come September, Mark, right? As to what we may or may not do.
So Tim,
And again,
Mark,
if I could put a penny and a half in, the interview process, you may want to bring Mark or somebody from his committee as part of the interview process. Just a thought.
Yep, for sure.
All right, we'll move on. Thank you, Mark, and thank you, team. Again, excellent job.
Hank, did you have a question?
I'm
I just,
sorry.
no, that's okay. I think you answered it, but the idea of what was done is going to be carried on by this new part-time person, right?
Yeah.
And that's the expectation.
Yes.
Okay.
I would say in concert, obviously, with myself, and Stacy has become a very, very flexible resource in this office. There's not much that girl can't do. So
That's great.
yes, so it'll be a 3-person team that'll direct all the marketing and digital initiatives.
Great.
Thank you. Planning and zoning, Jim?
Yeah, we had the Amazon for 5 Research Parkway at the planning and zoning last month. It was not approved, it was continued. There are some issues they're dealing with. I did not get a sense whether it was going to be approved or not. It's really borderline. It could go any way. They have a few hurdles to answer to, and we'll see what happens. It is on the schedule for next week. So we'll see what happens, but it was continued.
Thank you. Thank you at that meeting. Did you want to come in or?
No, it was a very comprehensive meeting.
Like, very, okay. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to retention. Gary, did we lose you?
Yeah, if Mark's group did little, we did much less than little. So we didn't have a meeting this month, so the idea is that we will plan to have our next meeting. I'm just gonna put a date out there to Tim, and we'll check it out and see if we can do it, but June 24th, and anytime during the day. And if Rose can make it and our other member, we will see if that works.
Very good, thank you. Okay. I don't know if you have anything left to say, Tim, but you're on. You're on mute, Tim.
Got to get that T-shirt. You're on mute, right? Sorry about that. I will be brief. I cannot stress enough the distress in the marketplace when it comes to workforce. People cannot find employees. It's a huge, huge issue. So just be aware. We have talked, we mentioned it to Rex tonight. I've mentioned it to different, all economic development groups that I'm involved with, including the Greater Neighborhood Chamber of Commerce Legislative Committee. A member of Representative Rosa DeLauro's office is on that committee. I mentioned it there. There doesn't seem to be any appetite for taking and like many other states have done in this country and discontinuing the federal unemployment stipend, which it's not just an opinion, but it is a fact. It is keeping the workforce at home. That along with, certainly there are some childcare challenges, there's no question, but there are a lot of people that could be working that don't have childcare issues, but they're opting to stay home because they're being compensated pretty handsomely to do just that. And in the summer months, I mean, what's better than getting the summer off? So every time I hear conversations, politicians, speaking about jumpstarting the economy, getting the economy started, I just clench and tighten up because the simple thing that they could do to get the economy started, they don't have the backbone to do it.
The lifting.
So it's disturbing.
Back on my phone.
Someone's not on mute there. I don't know who that is, but anyway, I'll move on. Last month, I shared with you that the Secretary of State's office has now given us the ability to look at all new business starts when they form an LLC or sometimes it's a foreign limited liability company, a domestic LLC. We can now see them every single month. I can remember for several years us being very proud of the fact that we had 50 new business starts every year for several consecutive years. And those are the ones that we could find, and we'd find them by going through our electric division hookup lists, by seeing them out in the marketplace when someone hangs a new shingle. Well, now the discovery is very different. So in the last 2 months, all right, so I'm looking at, and you've seen it in your packet, April and May, we've had 61 new business starts in the town of Wallingford in 2 months. All right, so what's happening is in a very, very big way, people are forming LLCs and doing business and starting businesses out of their homes. Of the 61 businesses that you have on that list, here's a brief list of the categories. All right, so nutrition, mental health services, property management, investments, home care, drywall, flooring specialists, every way you can do hairs, braids, et cetera, et cetera. It's got to be a dozen hair places, closet organization, general consulting, landscaping services, photography, flower arrangements, collectibles. Those are all categories of businesses that are now being operated out of people's houses. All right, those 61 LLCs. So you can see that there's a significant shift going on. Nice to know we've got all these businesses starting, but it's not like they're hanging a shingle someplace, on Center Street or Route 5 or something like that. So just, and I'm not passing judgment, good, bad, or indifferent. I just think it's very important for us to understand that there is a market trend and a sea change going on in the way people are conducting business. The last thing I just want to mention is on my report is there were under miscellaneous, I mentioned 3 different site visits that I had made in conjunction with our town planner. And I share that only because our town planner, Kevin Piccini, is new to the job. And you know how much we appreciated working with Casey Hand, because Casey was a very mobile town planner. She was willing to come out on site, talk to the businesses firsthand, guide them through what can be sometimes a complicated process of getting through the different commissions. And Kevin is, he is ready, willing, and able. I call him, he says, set up the time, let's go. So I think he's off to a very good start. I will tell you that Tom Talbot, who is the acting town planner, is still here because the volume in that office, just think of the volume with data centers, Research Parkway, and we have a fair amount of applications for different businesses going on. So the volume in planning and zoning right now is the size I've ever seen it. So the mayor's been gracious about letting Tom stay, and Tom has been gracious in his time to stay and help out. So I think we're our new town planner is off to a great start. I wanted this commission to hear that. And that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to unmute my mic, first of all. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate the input. I'm going to address 2 of your issues that I had on my sheet here.
Excuse me, Joe.
Yeah.
Can I just interrupt you for a minute? I'd just like to have everybody aware of the load that Tim has and that he carries for this commission. It's amazing. If you read his reports, his calls have doubled in the last year, and he covers a lot of ground in 30 hours a week, supposedly 30 hours a week. I don't see how that's possible. But I just like to take a minute. He does this report, he covers a lot of ground, and I'm definitely thankful for that report and for what he does. And I just wanted to take a minute. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Jim. And I think you speak for all of us. Tim has done an outstanding job. And again, we appreciate all you've done for us. You know, you've made my job a lot easier.
Thank you for your support.
I'm sorry?
I said, thank you very much for your support. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Okay, as far as the employment picture in Wallingford, it is what Tim has said, but Hubcap has actually addressed that. And as you know, we started the small business council down at Hubcap. And I just want to briefly go over both of those. As far as the businesses go, there's always a good side and a bad side. The good side to this business, the employment slowdown, is that businesses for the first time in my lifetime have really been looking at high school seniors right out of high school. With that, we partnered with the high school, and they've sent, we've started a database at Hubcap of all the seniors that are graduating that are not pursuing higher education. And what we're doing with that is, there's 2 things that's going on. I've been receiving a lot more inquiries from the businesses asking me if we have candidates for X, Y, Z and jobs. So what I've done is I formalized it, and I've asked the businesses just to send, you may pass the word, just to send Hubcap info at hubcapwallingford.org a help wanted ad, basically like you would have put in a newspaper, you know, whatever the job description is and contact information. With that, I've created a database that I just shoot it out to. healthcare, I just got 20 names from adult ed. Again, the schools are sending me their names. I'm working with SCAL. They're going to start sending me names. So we'll have a community database of eligible employees. Granted, many of them will be at entry level, but everyone's got to start someplace. And with that, we'll also be able to offer that new exploratory pipeline program to show this population the types of career paths. And I don't talk in jobs, we're talking career paths. And that's available in any position, in any industry that's out there. So we got that going on. As far as the small businesses go, we have that program in July. It's going to teach them marketing, accounting, everything they need to know to start or improve their business. Along with that, we have our old hubcap standbys that we're starting to promote now that we're out of the pandemic. And that's the incubator. A lot of these home businesses, the ones that have been there, are ready to move on. So they'll hopefully look into our incubators, which gives them a street address and that type of stuff. And hopefully within 3 months, we can kick them out to the community as we've done before. You know, who opened up a storefront, who's in an office, who went to Silicon Valley. But we've had some success stories there. And that's not a joke. That young lady went to Silicon Valley. She's now running a banking operation for one of the think tank people. Anyway, so there's success stories there. With that, we also offer the conference room for a lot of these home businesses if they want to meet with vendors. So there's opportunities to, you know, it's not the shingle that I know Tim is looking for, but we still want to help support these businesses and help them grow. And that unfortunately may be the way of the future. I just say all this because I'd like you guys to be ambassadors, because hubcap, again, is a byproduct of EDC. And the mayor, I make sure he understands. He understands that. So if you guys can be ambassadors, tell your other business acquaintances what we're offering. If you know startup businesses, have them reach out, and you know, we can all grow the economy together. Thank you for your time. Sorry to bore you. Any comments on anything?
Hey, Joe, I just want to let you know that your small business launch, the short course,
Yes, sir.
we put that out on as an Instagram post this afternoon. So
Thank you. Thank you. We already got people signing up for it, but that's going to be good. Again, I think this was a good meeting. It was several different topics. I appreciate the input. I guess it's time for that old-fashioned motion.
I'd like to make that motion, but I'd just like to make a comment with it before it gets seconded, and that is, it's refreshing to see people from the public also listening in on this meeting or these meetings, because it's really important. We've said ourselves that the biggest asset that we have to promote Wallingford is the people in Wallingford. You know, we're just the instrument of it. So when we start having people attending these meetings or listening in on what we're doing or comment on what we're doing, this is all, in my mind, very refreshing, because if we can get more of this, I'd love to see it. So motion's been made to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I also second Gary's comment about the public. It's always good to have a conversation and know what everybody's thinking. So I thank all of you who did give you input tonight, and have a nice night, and we'll see you. Oh, I'm sorry, we have a summer recess. Our next meeting isn't until September, is it? August?
I think we're supposed to meet.
End of August.
Yeah.
I can still talk to you, Joe.
Or 13.
Sorry?
August 30th.
Yeah.
Yeah, next
Okay,
meeting,
so-
August 30th.
Okay, but Mark, when you guys meet and decide on that panel, send us the minutes and we'll work on that over the summer as well. But
Will
until
do.
then, everyone have a nice summer. Thank you for all your help this year.
Yeah,
And,
no, it's 30. They gave out.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you to the committee. Good night.
This conference is no longer being